If there really was some sort of a massive natural disaster that happened around 11,000 years ago, and it killed almost everybody, and just the people that survived were fucking monsters. Yeah. Just monsters. And if you think about civilization like that impact theory from 11,800 years ago, and then you start looking at around 6,000 years ago, is when we start seeing evidence of agriculture and written language and crude, you know, but also like with an understanding of the solar system, like a detailed map of the solar system. They're probably the only people that survive, the most horrific amongst us, the craziest people, the people that were willing to eat people, the people that are the monsters in the movies where when a catastrophe happens they start turning to cannibalism. We're the ancestors of those people.
The people in Egypt, they believed in what's called Kemet, the people that existed before the Egyptians. When we hear these stories about the Great Pyramid being a tomb for the pharaoh, it's worth mentioning that even the locals didn't believe that. The saying that the pyramids were built to be tombs for the pharaohs wasn't even developed until 150 years ago. That's it. They were taught Kemet. And it's worth mentioning that when you go through inside these pyramids of Giza, there's not one single glyph in any of them whatsoever. There was never a mummy found in any Egyptian pyramid ever. Quite literally, the only reason why we are told this stuff is because that was the theory developed by these men that went in there and said, I believe these must have been for the pharaohs. That makes sense.
So it's all just one group of people had one theory, and that theory just stuck around.
100%.
There's still remains of like Greek ruins from 300 BC.
In Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Really? Jamie, can you pull some of that up?
Yeah.
So here it is. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I had no idea. So at one point in time, that had been some sort of a thriving community.
Yeah, that Iconium.
Wow. So they had an amphitheater.
It was a full-on Greek city.
That's incredible. What is that statue? It's a Buddha statue.
A lot of historians think that the Vedas and Buddhism started more in the Afghanistan area.
The Vedas?
Yeah.
Wow, look at all these Buddhas.
There was this brief moment of Greco-Buddhism in Central Asia.
That's so strange, because it's so obviously Greek art.
The folds in the robe and all that, yeah.
Yeah. Human civilization is so bizarre.
The fact that there's pyramids on 5 continents around the world. Is it a coincidence that they just happened to start building pyramids on multiple continents?
Here you see one from Egypt, one from Mexico. And one from Cambodia.
If you look at comparisons of the Indonesia pyramids and the ones in Mexico, they have similarities of the stripped steps that go up the middle of it. The reason why this is significant is if the Great Pyramid is 4,500 years old, my argument is that there are connections across the oceans that are not supposed to exist. According to everything, they're adamant. It wasn't until Christopher Columbus, 1492, sailed the ocean blue, but yet there's evidence that goes back more than 1,000 years prior. Peru, Egypt, places in Italy, Greece. There's a pyramid in Greece.
Humans are so adaptable. That's the whole idea behind Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson's theory about the restarting of human civilization, is that we had achieved a very high level of sophistication, which explains the pyramids and Göbekli Tepe, these immense stone structures where they move stones with some unknown technology from as many as 500 miles away, 1,000-ton stones through the mountains. We have no idea how the fuck they did it. And then you go 5,000 years later and you have barbarians.
Yeah.
And like, what happened? Well, most likely a fucking natural disaster that forced people to figure out a way to adapt and overcome. And I think that's one of the reasons why, if we go back a few thousand years ago, you have these people with these brilliant minds that live these unbelievably barbaric lives. And I think it's because they're the descendants of people that had to survive whatever was left over after the sophisticated civilization was hit by comets.
The other thing is, that's near where these shaman lived. And there was these sort of things, and I said, what are these? And they said, they're reflection ponds. I said, oh, like for reflecting. And he goes, no, for reflecting. And I'd never considered that you don't look at the stars by going, but that really, you look down and you mark. In 7 years, when it comes around again, you're like, pattern. Because I'm always like, how do you look up and learn a pattern of that?
Right.
But by looking down.
So they had ponds just to look at the reflection of the stars and map them out.
Yeah, the shaman did. That was like in their neighborhood. And the way you were a shaman is if you had a birthmark on your head when you were born, they immediately were like, 2 boards, rope, and just put 2 boards and roped you and began a lifetime of, so you're a shaman.
Zecharia Sitchin was this guy who wrote these books. It was all about these ancient Sumerians. And one of the weirdest things about it, these people had these clay tablets that had like a detailed map of the solar system. 6,000 years ago. They carved it in clay. And they also had these giant beings with like people with tails sitting on their lap. And they had the double helix of the DNA. He interpreted all this as this was some sort of an ancient recording, like where they were trying to record what had happened. And when he was going through these ancient Sumerian texts, he believes that it was really all about these beings called the Anunnaki. Those from heaven to earth came, and that these beings came from this planet that's described as Nibiru, and that they have manipulated human DNA forever. Oh, this is a question. Why does he have a watch on? Isn't that a watch?
How dare you? Impossible. Stop.
What is that?
It's jewelry.
It looks like a watch. I mean, maybe it's jewelry, but it's on his wrist, and it's a circle, and it's with a band.
Right.
I mean, what is that?
Mini Antikythera mechanism.
It looks like my watch.
It does.
It does.
That's crazy.
But, of course, the explanation is like, of course not. Just jewelry. But it does look like it, doesn't it?
Well, it just makes sense that if they developed weapons, and they developed clothing, and they developed shelters, if they had the sophistication to be able to construct these buildings, why wouldn't they be able to construct a watch?
Right.
An automatic watch. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, this is the same exact one.
This is fucking bonkers, man. Army ants build a bridge to invade wasp nest.
Yeah, look at that. And see the eggs? They're carrying the wasp eggs out of the nest.
Oh my god, what a bunch of creeps.
Everybody that commented was like, there's a rope in the middle of that. That's not real.
But
there's no rope. You can see right through it.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that it's just all ants.
That is just ant bodies.
Imagine how fucking strong the ants at the very top that are hanging onto the board, holding a giant rope of ants.
Yeah.
What a crazy organism.
Denisova Cave is another example of a missing chapter in the human story. They left behind certain physical objects. One of them is a green stone bracelet, and a hole has been drilled through the bracelet. Then the archaeologists started to take a look at the drill marks, and what they discovered was a huge anomaly. That was drilled with a fixed drill at extremely high speed. This is thought to be 40 or 50,000 years old. There is not supposed to have been any such technology in that period that was capable of drilling with a stable fixed drill, and yet there it appears. Also incredible, very fine bone needles, and the suggestion has been, were they making skin boats, for example? That would explain how they managed to get themselves to Australia. Those kind of needles, that kind of bracelet, you could expect to find them in what archaeologists call the Neolithic, but to find it in the Paleolithic is very puzzling and very odd, and it suggests that the Denisovans were certainly not shambling subhumans, that they were refined creatures.
This is wild. The soleus muscle, the wider muscle of the calf. Turns out the soleus is an unusual muscle because it's a very small percentage of our total musculature, but its energy utilization is enormously high. When people just bounce their heel, their insulin sensitivity improves, their resting glucose improves, and all they're doing is moving a bit more, but they are moving their soleus. What's happening? It's likely that they're mimicking walking during the day, that they're getting these positive effects.
Wow.
I'm not encouraging people to just do this, but these micro movements that we do add up a lot during the day.
I watched a rat trip a mousetrap, a rat trap today. So look at this rat. He realizes that's a trap. There's a nice piece of cheese on it. So he brings a stick and he trips the fucking trap. Come on, man. He knows what he's doing. He didn't even freak out.
No, it didn't startle him at all.
At all.
No. Yeah, that could break your neck very easily.
That's supposed to kill you. He's got to know, probably. These things killed my friends. I mean, you think about how ridiculous human beings are. We spend most of our lives accumulating stuff, trying to get status, and meanwhile there's rocks headed our way that are going 45,000 miles an hour that could exterminate 90% of the population instantaneously and completely erase every little bit of information we've ever accumulated. All the knowledge, all of our history, all of our understanding of physics, mathematics, astronomy, everything. Gone. See ya. Goodbye. Welcome to being a fucking ape man again.
Yep.
The largest vessel that's ever been found from ancient Egypt is
a canoe.
Basically. And now the point that's significant in this is that that is the largest boat that they've ever found. If they're going to claim that they were moving, 100-ton stone blocks on barges, I just want to iterate that they've never found one, and there was no inscription that shows anything large enough that would have done it. I've said it before, and I feel bad, but it's a shitbox in
Look
comparison.
at it. It is a total shitbox. It's such a bad design. Look at how low. It has very little depth in the water, so it will have very little stability. And then it's also top heavy. It's like driving around in a Sprinter van on a racetrack. Any wave at all is tipping that bullshit boat over. I was watching this documentary today. It's a new James Fox documentary about a UFO landing in Brazil in 1996. Holy shit, it's incredible. I had no idea that there's this city called Varginha, and in 1996, according to everyone who was there, according to medical records of people who were there, the military came in, they recovered a crashed UFO, and there was living creatures that people came in contact with, and one of them was this tiny little thing that this guy carried, and he carried it to wherever they were going to examine it. When he carried it, he got whatever was on its skin. It had like a slippery kind of a skin. It got into his body and infected him, and he wound up with this horrible general infection, and he wound up dying. His body shut down. His immune system shut down. His body didn't know what the fuck to do with this alien thing that he was interacting with. There's real records of this guy contacting this thing, grabbing it, carrying it in. All these people witnessed it, and then this guy winds up with this insane infection shortly thereafterwards. That's all documented too, all of his medical records. Did you know how many fucking religions there could be?
This is a religion, for sure. It just means a bunch of people listen to a uniform thought process. I don't think you need a book. I don't think you need shit.
You know Alex Gray, the visionary artist? I'm sure you've seen his work. Alex Gray started a religion, and he has a church that is designed around his art. It's called Entheon. That's the church. Like, how amazing. You got to see what it looks like on the outside.
Whoa.
That's the outside of it. Look at that. Entheon. So they have like fucking yoga classes there and shit. They're like a real church. Imagine going into the woods with all these hippies and you go do yoga in that place with this guy.
I know.
And you're all chanting and shit. And he's a real deal. He's not like trying to rip people off. They play music and they get together, and it's not like he gets to fuck everybody's wife. It's a regular church.
I hope it stays that way. Because this story sometimes goes the wrong way.
They almost always go the wrong way.
Real quick, did you hear what Elon Musk said on the Full Send podcast a few months ago?
What?
So at 2 hours and like 53 minutes, they start talking about cataclysms and ice ages. He goes on to say that...
Well, let's listen to this.
Okay.
Listen to
if you read about ice ages. There's deep rabbit hole on ice ages. Deep rabbit hole. I mean, I think it's just interesting how much Earth's climate has changed, and even magnetically where the poles are has shifted over time. Something happened around that ice age, because we see no writing before that ice age, and we start to see writing pop up in multiple places on Earth after the most recent colloquially termed ice age.
That's about it. He knows. I look at these topics that we're into: cataclysms, Younger Dryas, lost ancient technology.
Magnetic poles.
That's the one thing. I would like to dive into that.
We've had more professors suspended or dismissed in the last 10 or 15 years than we've had since McCarthyism. When I was in college, campuses were where you went to hear the other side, right? That's how you rounded things out. If there was a speaker coming that was totally on the other side, you went to listen to them. Now, students think it's okay to shout down somebody you disagree with. If you don't listen to them, you get rid of them. What's that about?
When it comes to bats, how much variation is there? I know that there's some really large bats in Asia, right?
There's, yes, large bats in Asia,
What's
Africa.
the biggest bat?
The biggest bat has a wingspan of almost 6 feet. I
Whoa.
have a colleague who swears that the biggest ones sometimes actually get to 6 feet.
What is that bat?
Flying foxes. There are 200 kinds of flying foxes. Some of them are small and some are big.
Look at the size of that sucker. That's in the Philippines? Look at that. That's crazy.
Well, that's kind of like holding your fish out a bit in front of you to exaggerate.
But it seems, even if it's forced perspective, that seems pretty large. There's 2,300,000 stones in the Great Pyramid. Do you know if you cut and place 10 stones a day, it would take you 664 years to make the pyramid?
It was the craziest thing that I've seen that humans have made. Like, awe-inspiring.
I more and more think that we just have to use our imagination, because we're thinking of technology only as technology that we've implemented.
Yeah.
But it's possible there was a completely different branch of technology, and they had figured out something that allowed them to manipulate enormous stones. We just haven't figured it out.
If you feel your head right now, these cracks in your head, you have one of those on your upper palate. That can open and you can widen your mouth in adulthood. The one that I used was called a homeoblock, this device that went to the roof of your mouth, and it had a little dowel screw, and you slowly opened it up.
And how long did you wear it for?
I wore it for 1 year, 1 year to the week.
And you gained how much volume in your mouth?
I gained 5 pennies worth of bone in my face, which is crazy.
That's a lot of bone, man.
We've been told that we can't grow bone past 30, but we can. We can build it in the center of our face, in the maxilla.
So you can really change the structure of your face. You could widen your face?
You can add more bone. You can model more bone inside of your face.
Have you ever been to Teotihuacan? Something really interesting happened to me there. This guy, whose nickname was Gorilla, giving us this wonderful tour. And he goes, wait, right here. And we're in this giant square. And he runs down this dirt mound about 150 feet away. And he goes, can you hear me? And it was like, oh my God. I could hear him. He goes, this square was built with these mounds here to be able to speak at this voice to 250,000 people.
Whoa.
And I was like, what?
Did it make sense, the acoustics, like the way it's set up?
Because I play music, I thought, okay, that means these acoustics are so perfect. Like, how do you discover that? Are you in a canyon? And you're like, wow, this sounds... Can you hear me over there? Right. And then you sort of triangulate and start doing the geometry for how that works. How does that manifest itself, that understanding?
Yeah, how many thousands of years did it take before they figured out how to construct something?
Yeah, where someone on their deathbed is like, wait, one last thing about acoustics.
Sound kind of bounces off shit.
But it's got to be shaped like this.
Look at this. Right-wingers melt down over satanic Pfizer-sponsored Grammys. I almost feel like this is too on the nose. I almost feel like we're all being played against each other, while these people are like just finding ways to control us and control all the money. I feel like this is all fake. I know it's real. I know that was a real song, and I know that's a real commercial afterwards, but it just seems so stupid. Someone in the World Economic Forum, some fucking billionaire that's running the world's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get these people fighting while I institute some sort of a gigantic global social credit score system. If AI is real already, if artificial intelligence is real already and it's manipulating us, that's how it manipulates us. Just get us to fight over the dumbest shit. Researchers have discovered a crater beneath the Antarctica ice crust 482 kilometers in diameter. Holy shit.
That's like an order of magnitude bigger than
the dinosaur one, right?
Yeah, that's like a 99 point whatever % extinction event.
So it's
it
just keeps happening. The Earth just, over millions and millions of years and thousands of years that humans have been around, the Earth just keeps getting whacked. Dude, you know what I saw that was fascinating? They took apart this 100-plus-year-old Japanese building that was made with no nails. The craftsmanship is so insane. I'm talking about this precision, thin cuts on wood where they mesh together perfectly. Yeah, this is it. Look at how they did this. This is the Japanese construction. Isn't that insane? Look how they made these perfect cut wedges and they just slide into each other. But what's fascinating about someone who's willing to commit to building stuff like this is like, this is engineering, this is art, this is architecture. Look at how they're doing this, man, when they're making all these things slide into each other and secure in place with wedges. This is incredible. I love that one dude who cheats, but he's also really good at chess. He beat
Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah. He might have just beaten him. We don't even know if that was real because it was never proven, right? I don't even know how they theorize. If someone's playing chess and they have signals, how could it even tell you how to move your pieces around?
There's a bunch of devices that can vibrate. They're just like the size of a quarter. And so you would use a lot of information like Morse code to just send you the position of the piece.
You can kind of like hover the piece of like warmer, colder.
So you can have... No, because the way he would cheat is I think the games were delayed by a few minutes, so you can't hover. I think if he didn't cheat, it's kind of embarrassing, but it's also awesome. I think he brought a lot of attention to chess.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people were paying attention to it because it was a scandal. Regular chess is boring. We want a scandal. How many guys have been good at jiggling their belly but never really pursued it, and now they're so pissed? I was the man. Back in college, I was that guy. I was the belly jiggler guy. I just didn't know to stick with it. There's something about watching someone who looks like they're having a good time.
Live your dream.
Yeah. Something about watching someone who looks like they're having a good time makes you have a good time.
Do you want something that's going to blow your mind? So this area right here, we discussed this last time as being water ripples. I've measured these more than 3,000 feet to 6,600 feet in between each ripple and more than 200 feet high.
Wow.
So if these are indeed caused from ripples like you see on the beach from catastrophic flooding, this is a force of water that is truly, it goes beyond the mind's comprehension. It's something that I don't think we could even understand. I don't know how to say this, but no one else seems to be talking about this.
I think that the NSA probably eavesdrops on Americans, and that's illegal.
What are you saying, man? You think your phone is listening to you? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, right? I do. And I think Snowden talked about that, and I think that's true.
No question about it. And, you know, I think that they probably can write some of it off to national security. But it gets a little sketchy when you find out that they're doing things to set people up. Like that 19-year-old kid they talked into detonating a fake bomb, got a real vulnerable, dumb kid, radicalized him, gave him a bomb, told him to plant it, gave him a cell phone to call, was going to detonate the bomb. He did it, and then they arrested him. They gave him all the stuff. They told him to do it. Like, then he did it, and they're like, we gotcha. We've stopped this terrorist plot. So what's the science behind this complete reversal of the magnetic poles?
They claim that the geomagnetic pole shift is because of the interior, whether it's the iron core or whatever it is, the molten core does a shift, and because of it, that's why the compass will flip. This has happened throughout millions and millions of years. This is mainstream science. The poles do flip. But it's not that the Earth flips over, it's that the inside core does, and so your magnetic compass will flip. It allegedly happens in cycles. The Earth's shields will be diminished, and we're long overdue.
And are there any estimates on when this could possibly take place?
According to every article I ever read, like, oh, don't worry, it's probably be another 1,000 years. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's accelerating. But there's other things that happen on Earth, whether it's super volcanoes. What if that's related to pole shifts as well? The reason why we're not seeing the evidence of it is because it flips right back and thus masks the evidence that it ever happened. So it's pretty wild.
You guys are freaking me the fuck out, man. I got beat up on a bus by a girl when I was 14. Something happened when I got on the bus, and there was this tough girl, smoked cigarettes, she had a leather jacket, but she either decided I was in the wrong seat or whatever, so she just starts wailing on me. This girl kicked my ass, and I didn't even fight back. I was just like covering my head up, and she's just fucking with a leather jacket on, a fucking cigarette. She just started punching me, and then this little guy who wanted to be my friend, his name is Muggsy Malone. He was this tiny little guy. He was like in 5th grade. And then he comes over, he goes, I ain't fucking afraid of you either. I'm like, oh, Jesus. It's like, what the fuck
like
is
he
that?
jumped on her side against you?
100%. Yeah, it was like one of those things where I was like, my God, I got to learn how to fight. Most of the plants that are overwhelming the rainforest is actually man-made.
From ancient civilizations.
Yeah. They had developed a very specific type of soil.
Oh, yes, I know about this.
Yeah.
And we've been unable to replicate it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the
Terra
difference.
preta. Yeah,
Terra
that's
preta.
it.
But that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You certainly don't think of that. And you don't think of, at least in today's world, I don't think of the Amazon as being populous. You don't think of civilizations being able to impact that much vastness.
Graham Hancock thinks there was 20 million people living in it.
20 million?
Yeah.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
He thinks it is a vast society. Particularly in Egypt, they find these completely different construction methods. The older buildings that are deeper under the ground, they have a very different style. They use much larger stones, like sitting on top of each other, these structures in these hallways and columns, and it's like you clearly see the difference between the stones where they laid stones next to each other and this one where there are immense stones sitting on other immense stones. There's a very specific style to them. And it seems like the more sophisticated methods are the older methods because the stones are larger.
And then at the quarry, you have these scoop marks. Like you have this whole other technology that exists where it's like they've scooped away at the granite with an ice cream scoop. You can get in under a piece of stone. Look, they'll tell you that it's this pounding stone of dolerite about that big, and they reckon they were doing this with it. Which is, it doesn't make sense at about 15 different levels.
I'm having a hard time understanding how that's even possible.
Real quick, this image right down here. So they wanted to claim that's how they did it, that they were banging away with this rock, basically upwards.
What's this guy doing?
This is exactly what I did.
He's banging on it with a dolerite pounder.
Nothing about this is fun.
What's the wackiest explanation for these scoop marks?
Some sort of molecular softening tool that just comes in and scoops it out. Like somehow it gets between the...
Molecular softening tool.
Like can soften the stone, can change the molecular bonds beneath the stone, and then just being able to somehow scoop it out. I don't know. It looks that way when you look at it.
If you look at the Romans, go back 2,000 years ago to today, What an insane amount of progress. So if these anatomical human beings existed 200,000 years ago, what if they developed something on a totally different path, just developed it to this level that we can't possibly comprehend? What if they had 10, 20,000 years to do that? That's likely what we're looking at when we look at the structures in Egypt. If you would imagine that those people had been given enough time, whether it's 20,000, 30,000 years, to evolve these technologies, and then boom, hit by giant rocks from the sky and millions of people are killed. The people that are left live a barbaric existence for thousands of years and then relearn civilization, and it starts from scratch. That's what Graham Hancock is talking about.
Yeah.
So many of these stones are these odd shapes, like jigsaw puzzles, and they're fit in perfectly.
Polygonal.
Yeah.
These polygonal walls that are found in multiple continents around the world. There's this nub phenomena. There's these similarities across numerous continents. You can find them in Japan, Peru, Easter Island.
It's really wild stuff because it's so obvious that somehow or another these people had to be in communication with each other or sharing information or had carried information.
And we're looking at this after thousands of years.
Right.
Who knows how many earthquakes, weather erosion.
Some of the details in these are astonishing. These little tiny notches. It's matched on all the sides of the stone, and it's not just surface level either. It goes all the way through.
It's just so strange because it's such a strange way of constructing things, and yet it exists all over the world. Look at the size of that one stone.
Probably 500 tons, I bet.
Holy shit. Also, when you see him getting grilled, his hands are shaking and you see he's lying. You do not know what you are talking about. He's slowing the conversation down to an almost unfollowable level. Senator, who the fuck talks like that? It's like a switch-up pitch in baseball. Like, why is it coming at me 50 miles an hour? This doesn't make any sense. You almost don't know what to do. You just want to interrupt him and just badger him and beat him down. And when you do that, that's what he wants. He wants chaos. He wants you to be yelling at him so he can get out of there. You do not know what you are talking about. I've seen black bears walk upright. There was a black bear in New Jersey that had a very badly damaged front paw, so it would walk on its rear legs. It would walk upright like a 7-foot tall animal.
That's crazy.
I don't think people realize how big bears are.
Bears are big. We were in Montana, and we were at this grizzly preserve. They fed this thing a frozen watermelon, and this bear crushed this frozen watermelon like it was a grape, like you and I would do a grape. Just took giant bites out of a frozen watermelon.
Wow.
And I was like, imagine the power of this fucking thing. They're so big. Well, not only that, let's like let them fly a balloon over the country.
Oh my
Where's the balloon? The spy balloon.
I mean, the funny thing is, we already knew that their spy satellites are able to see this area and collect whatever data there is to collect.
So what's the purpose of balloons? The balloon has the ability to maneuver and had changed course. It seems like it's under its own power. So the worry about shooting it down was the payload, like it's large?
They actually wanted to be able to like observe it more and see what it was and capabilities and whatever. It might be more useful to it in the sky than shot up.
Well, the Avengers have a net they could shoot out of a jet. You telling me the United States doesn't have a net?
I don't know, man.
That's a compromise position. I like that.
Oh, God. Diver decapitated by 19-foot great white shark in the Gulf of California, report says. Does this just happen?
Yeah, January 5th.
Oh! My friend Peter Attia, he swam all the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah.
And he was training for this in San Diego. And I think the week he was training, some guy got eaten by a great white shark. So he's out there in the very waters where a guy got bit in half. And apparently they were all training for a triathlon.
Yeah.
So there was like a run of them, you know, like 10, 15 guys swimming, and just one of them.
Yeah, well, she's gone.
Yeah. One of the things that Elon saw is like the idea that you're going to let people just go wild. No, you have to have some restrictions because he had to ban Kanye West.
He touched the third rail. He has his reasons, and these are long-rooted reasons that neither of us are qualified to discuss.
I think the correct thing to do is to let him talk, and then for people to talk about the dumb things that he's saying. What he's saying is wrong. We're all with you. But people should be able to say that to him, and the only way they can say that to him is if he's actually on there. Why is Leroy Jenkins so famous? When having been absent during his group's discussion of a meticulous plan, Leroy returns and ruins it by charging straight into combat while shouting his own name as a battle
Play
cry.
the video. You have to play the video.
So what game is this?
Okay, guys. These eggs have given us
What game is it?
World of Warcraft. A lot better than we usually do. All right, thumbs up. Ready, guys? Let's do this.
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Save him. Oh, geez, stick it clean.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, so Leroy wasn't paying attention to their plan? He just came back from taking a shit? How funny is it that out of all the people playing World of Warcraft, this one thing where he says Leroy Jenkins becomes famous?
Well, also, all those cities, like the one in Peru.
Oh, yeah,
like,
Machu Picchu. The wackiest theory I heard was that used to be at the base of water, and that everything out in front of that was all water.
Yeah.
That might be just a wacky theory. But if it's not, how did they do that? They made them so they're all like kind of jigsaw pieces. They all slide right into each other. And they're fucking enormous.
And they're perfectly fit together.
Yeah.
It's not just like random, like fill in with mortar. No.
These guys are artists and engineers and wizards. Like, how the fuck did they do that? I'm always concerned with things that people are dismissive of, because that's when they hit you. People lived in Pompeii. They're like, that volcano? Don't worry about it. We're good. They go on these long cycles, some of them, these super volcanoes, and they just fucking blow, and you never know when it's going to happen. They create islands in the middle of the ocean. That's what Hawaii is.
Yeah.
It's a fucking volcano that's sprung out of the ocean. Now you go vacation there and put fucking suntan lotion on, sit out there and have margaritas. You're on a volcano. Creative and destructive force of the earth, the thing that makes mountains, and you're camping out on it. And that's our life. That's the reality of living on earth. This is not stable. There's like a subspecies of chimpanzee that's enormous. They call it the Bili ape, the Bondo ape. Look at the size of that thing.
Wow, that does not look like a chimp.
I know. It's enormous. The locals have two categories. They call the smaller chimps tree beaters because they're up in the trees, and the bottom ones they call lion killers. And they nest on the ground like gorillas. They saw this one walk across the road, and they said it's 6 feet tall. A 6 foot tall chimpanzee that was hundreds and hundreds of pounds. They have video of one of them eating a jaguar.
No way.
Yeah. Or, excuse me, a leopard, because it's in Africa.
Wow.
But they call them lion killers. But you can imagine a chimpanzee that's 6 foot tall, 400
They're
pounds.
super aggressive. Chimpanzees in general can be super aggressive.
They're like us.
Yeah.
Closest to
They're
us.
closest to us, yeah.
All of this that I've learned from Graham Hancock and from Randall Carlson, it all fits into place. It all makes sense. Like, why is civilization so wacky? Why do we have these weird structures that no one can really explain? And when you think about the fact that there's so much evidence that we were hit by comets, that we were hit by large objects, it's just crazy that it's happened so many times. We like to think of history as being this linear thing. We started out as cave people, and then we branched out from Africa all across the world and kept learning. And here we are today with cell phones. But no, we've been rocked like multiple times. Many times. You guys ever watch that movie about the lost city of Z? It was about an explorer from England who made his way to South America and eventually got eaten by cannibals, allegedly, they think. But they know this for sure now. There's some really, really ancient cities in the Amazon, and they don't know from when. They don't know who built them.
So they don't even know from who. It's a different culture.
Well, it's a culture that's long gone, but the area where they had the city has been absorbed by the jungle. So they find it, I think, either from satellites or from some kind of imagery where they're noticing these really obvious grid patterns that indicate irrigation and that they had fields and they had streets. And what's interesting to me is that these people, they literally had no idea what the fuck was going on in South America, but someone would come back and, Sir Arthur has a story of his journeys down the jungle river. And the guy would stand up. We met the uncontacted tribe, and they would talk about, I've brought back pottery, and here's drawings of the animals that I saw. He's got drawings of crocodiles and giant piranhas and shit. The idea that there's a centralized digital currency connected to a social credit score system is absolutely terrifying, because people self-censor already. They self-censor just because they're worried about other people's opinions. Like, that's what virtue signaling is all about. Virtue signaling is people sending out a signal to let everyone know that you're a good person. And you know, a lot of those people are not really good people, but they want to send out that signal, and they're terrified about the repercussions of not being a good person. If you're the government and you're telling people to behave and think in a certain way and follow a certain ideology, if they're financially penalized, which they are in China. In China, if they vary, if they stray from the path and, you know, criticize the government, you can't buy plane tickets. You're not going anywhere.
Have you been to the Vatican?
No.
It's wild.
Yeah?
Vatican's confusing. Yeah, because there's so much shit there. I knew that there was an immense amount of artwork there, but when you actually go there and you see the billions and billions of dollars worth of art that was accumulated over who knows how many hundreds, if not thousands of years, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah.
It's like a raiders horde. I mean,
Right.
that's really what it is.
Well, yeah.
They clearly stole all this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have it all in one spot. And that one spot is also its own country, which is weird. It's its own country inside Italy. So it has its own extradition laws, which is great because it happens to be overrun with pedophiles.
Yes, this is true.
It's pretty fucked.
Then you have like Pompeii, where a volcano erupted and just wiped the whole civilization out.
Yep, froze people.
Froze them.
Have you gone there?
Yeah.
It's weird, right?
It's creepy.
Can you imagine like being there, just chilling, having a good time in Pompeii, and then you see, boom. Why are we here? Why did we build a
Why
city
did we
right
build
here?
right here by a volcano? They say the steam from that will just melt you. Just melt you.
There's a great video of Hawaii. This guy's got his Mustang parked on a street, and the lava just comes down the street and engulfs the Mustang and destroys it. And you see this lava flow headed towards that car. You're like, what the fuck is happening? Lets you know you're not supposed to stop there.
No. Don't live here.
That's a bad spot. But beautiful place to live.
Yeah.
Like, look at that fucking outfit. He looks like a space druid.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. The fact that he chose to leave his house dressed like that, like, yes, I will adjust the peons. All the public needs to know that we are in control. Look at this guy, like that weird star on the right one and whatever it says on the left one. What does it stand for?
A goat with a cross.
Oh, a fucking goat with a cross in its head.
It's a bull, I think.
Whatever it is, a bull. Jesus Christ. I almost wish that I didn't have this podcast and I could just go and hang out with those people. I saw a squirrel once in Alberta, and for a full second I thought it was a wolf.
Please tell me how that happened.
I saw this thing run across this downed tree, and for like a full second, I was like, oh my God, is that a wolf fur? That's a fucking squirrel. God, you're dumb. That was like that was how it played out in my mind.
But you had already made it to be a wolf in your head. And if you hadn't seen the rest of the squirrel, you had always seen a wolf.
Yeah, I saw a wolf, bro. If I was Elon Musk, you know what I would do? I'd hire someone to make a pyramid. I'm like, let me see if you can do
Build
it.
one.
Who's the best motherfuckers
Hell
around?
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw $1 billion at this project. I bought Twitter for 44.
Yeah.
Make me a pyramid, bitch.
It's got to
do it.
It's got to make it as accurate.
Or
as
I
a
want my
great pyramid.
fucking money back.
Yeah.
Shit better line up. New Jersey has the most bears per capita of any place in the country, including Alaska.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
I think including Alaska.
They have
I'm
a
pretty
ton of
sure.
black bears, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Right.
all black bears. But we've played this video many times of Far Walkaway, New Jersey. Is that where it was? Where these fucking enormous bears are duking it out in a really suburban area. Watch this, because it's fucking bonkers. These are 200-300 pound bears.
Oh
They're
my God.
fucking huge.
Like in your yard.
These two bears, they're knocking over trash cans, and they're piling out into the streets.
Oh my God.
Look at giant chunks of fur flying off of them. These are huge bears. Giant predators that will 100% kill your dog, 100% kill your kids. You leave a baby outside, the baby's dead, the bear eats it and runs away with it. This is what happens when you don't control predators. We are at the precipice of unstoppable great change, and I think we're just really fortunate to be alive at this time.
Yes.
Where the whole world is going to shift. And I think one of the things you're seeing from whether it is these corporations or these government entities, this is like them trying to grasp the last bits of control that are potentially available. But I think inevitably they're going to lose. I think there's going to be no privacy. I think zero privacy in a few decades. I think mind reading is coming. I think that all of these ridiculous Black Mirror scenarios will come to light. And I think we're going to be dealing with a reality that as alien to us as taking Australopithecus and bringing them a million years forward into 2023 and experiencing modern life in Dallas, Texas, like wandering around. That is what our life in 20 years is going to be to us, whether it's the pyramids or all these other structures that are impossible to do today. I'm a believer that all those structures are most likely the evidence of a super advanced civilization that existed that got wiped out by meteors. Most of that stuff that they keep finding, like the structures of Göbekli Tepe and all these other structures they find around the world, they don't really know where they came from. I think a lot of that is probably evidence of some shit that existed a long time ago and they got wiped out.
To people who aren't aware, there's a location in the Western Sahara Desert of Mauritania called the Richat Structure. It's also commonly referred to as the Eye of the Sahara. What's so spectacular about this is that it just so happens to match more than a dozen striking similarities to what Plato had described as the lost ancient city of Atlantis. Plato had described Atlantis as being the capital. Let me just mention that because it was an empire said to be made up of 10 kingdoms, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 3 of water, 2 of land, which matches the Richat structure. It also was said to have an opening to the sea at the south. You can clearly see that water had ran through it.
There's so many things, like where the water flows to the south, where there's clear evidence of water erosion that took place after the volcano. There's so much that points to that possibly being Atlantis.
From sources unknown, I can also tell you that at some point I've seen an RFP, request for proposal, for people to develop drone systems. You know that movie Prometheus, where they threw the drones up and they're in that tunnels? There was an RFP for tech like that because the premise was that they wanted to be able to fight in underground cities.
Fight?
Yeah, like as in for the military. We want to be able to map terrain and have these drones that can navigate in underground space without GPS and map the environment because the combat situation was fighting in underground cities.
There's going to be a small population of marauding people, and
potentially
there's very little resources, and a small number of humans left alive, and civilization will be thrown into chaos.
Right.
Fun.
Yeah,
fun.
a lot of a good time.
So much fun.
I'm sure there's people that are exploring that premise, man. They have to be, I think.
Smart people, top men, as they call it. They must be looking into it.
America is the most likely home base for a lost civilization. I mentioned Moundville earlier on. What is odd about it is we find this system of ancient Egyptian ideas in Moundville 500 years after ancient Egypt has gone from the world. The Romans were the end of ancient Egypt. By 400 AD, ancient Egypt is gone. Moundville doesn't even exist then, but 600 years later, it is created and it manifests the entire set of ancient Egyptian ideas. Clearly, it did not get that as a result of direct transmission from ancient Egypt, unless they were time travelers. The only way I think it could have got it is as a result of a legacy passed down from a much earlier civilization that had influenced and affected many different parts of the world.
If you go back to that, the vase lip, right, they created a point cloud of the top of this lip, so the flatness. It's within 0.003 of an inch of being basically perfectly flat.
Wow.
But that's
0.003 of an inch.
0.003 of an inch, and it's just astounding. This puts the whole concept of can these even remotely been made by hand to bed. To give you an example, so if you take a sheet of printer paper like this, that's about 7,500 thousandths thick.
Holy shit.
A human hair, 2 to 3 thousandths of an inch. That's how precisely aligned the mouth of the vase is.
Did you ever see the video of the raccoon moving through the rafters?
No.
Oh, dude. Like Mission Impossible style. Watch how he's doing it. Look at this. Isn't that wild? I mean, he's easily just moving around, crawling his way across the ceiling, like with zero effort.
Respect.
Respect.
Raccoons are the shit.
They're the shit.
Raccoons rule.
It's dope having raccoons around.
Yeah.
Because they're not real dangerous.
I like those guys.
Raccoons are cool.
Yeah, I like raccoons.
They'll eat your chickens, but whatever.
Oh, they eat chickens?
Yeah.
The Sphinx, which is obviously one of the most amazing structures of the ancient world, the Egyptians don't talk about it. They don't know when it was built or why, and it's just odd. Imagine talking about New York and never mentioning the Statue of Liberty in your literature. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Here's why it's interesting that you brought up the Sphinx, because the temple of the Sphinx is the best evidence that it's older than people think it is. You see the walls on the outside?
Yeah.
Those lines are a clear sign of water erosion. You don't get that kind of erosion from sand and wind. Those type of fissures are only created from water, from thousands of years of rainfall. The last time there was rain in the Nile Valley was like 9,000 years ago. So it had to be thousands of years older than that. When they first found these fissures, they were like, there's no way, there's no evidence of any culture that existed that was sophisticated that long ago. Where's the culture? Where's the evidence? Well, now they have evidence.
We dug deep into these past lives. They send these lights across your eyes, and it almost puts you in this trance. It took me into this Viking camp.
So this light thing and someone's guiding, like, what is it doing to your mind?
You can't see anything but the lights. So your mind is like the only thing that's really working. I go into this Viking camp and I'm there. And I'm like with my woman and I'm getting ready to go to war. She's like putting me in armor. And then I grab my fucking axe and a shield and I go to war. And I'm out there like murdering people out on the battlefield, just going ham, you know, just axing people, and like it was crazy.
So you felt this?
I could feel it. I could feel it. It was like I was doing it. And then I was betrayed.
In the battle?
Dream, I was betrayed by my brother. Whoever my brother was, they couldn't control me anymore. So they didn't want me to marry this woman. And I did. And then they fucking had me killed.
This was all in this experience?
I wake up because my head was getting chopped off.
Holy shit.
So I was like, let me do some DNA. Scandinavian all the way through.
Of course. Look at you. I always wonder, there's some sort of knowledge that gets transferred to children. It just makes sense.
Right.
My mom had a friend, grew up in Utah. Maybe she's 18, 19 years old, whatever year, 70s, 80s, whatever. Goes on a date with this guy, and she's at the table with him, and she feels very like a ominous feeling looking at this man. She went to a payphone at the restaurant, called her brother, and was like, can you please come pick me up, and stayed in the bathroom until her brother was outside, and went in the car and left. So the brother, he's leaving the next morning at 5 a.m., sees some ruffling in the bushes, sees a guy running out, says, holy shit, whatever, runs back in the house, says he was wearing like a beige jacket. That's the guy I was on a date with. He was like waiting. He must have been like waiting for me, right? Goes on, life goes on. What a psycho, lunatic boyfriend. 3 years later, Ted Bundy on the news. She was on a date with Ted Bundy. She said when he saw him, she literally almost fell out of her chair because she was like, that look, he does not look like that. His face configures and contorts to something that looks so sinister that she literally was like, get me away from him now.
There's something called the Osiris Shaft, which is located directly under the causeway between the Sphinx and the second pyramid. It goes about 100 feet underground. It's carved out of the limestone bedrock. It's the creepiest place I've ever been in my life. It's 3 different shafts, and you go down. When you get to the 3rd level, which is completely dark and freaky, there was a side tunnel. Zahiawas himself, he's standing in front of this tunnel, and he says, it's yet to be explored. I don't know what's down there, but they've since sealed it up. It's like cinder blocks. They sealed it up.
What?
Yes! It's the same thing. Like, they excavated the Sphinx, and there was always said to be tunnels under there, and there was no pictures ever released to the public, and some dude snuck down in there and took some photos. You can't see much, but what you know is that there are things that have gone underground in Egypt that, for whatever reason, is just off limits to the public.
If I could go back in time and see any era, I think Egypt during its prime would be the era that I would look into. Because
100%.
if you look at all of what we know about ancient civilization, whatever's left, all the amazing sites that archaeologists have explored, that's the one that's the most what the fuck.
It is. If there was one thing I could go back in time and look at, I want to see what was going on then. I want to see the construction, because then it would answer many, many other questions. Yeah. That one thing alone would answer so many other things.
My wife is deathly afraid of sharks. I'm like, I swim with sharks all the time. There's certain sharks that if it appeared next to me, I'd crap my pants. But
my buddy Duncan was in Hawaii. Guy pops up for air and they're yelling, get out of the water, get out of the water. So he runs to get out of the water and then realizes it was his wife.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's horrible. But it's so rare.
Fuck rare. If you found out that there were werewolves, that werewolves were real, would you ever go in the woods at night, even when it wasn't a full moon? But meanwhile, sharks are real, and everybody's like, well, it's so rare. If it's a shark, you can't even move good.
Yeah.
Like, you're like...
Yeah, first time I went diving on an actual shark feed, they were like, okay, you know, the sharks are fine, just don't provoke them. I'm like, cool. You're down underwater where you can't talk to anybody and ask any questions. And I was like, I should have asked if eye contact was a provocation. Yes.
Sharks are so simple-minded. I don't even think they understand what eye contact is. I think they're just like, they're zombies, man.
Yeah.
They scare the shit out of me. Then you look at these legends like Noah's Ark or the Epic of Gilgamesh, and you hear about these stories of floods and of cataclysms. It's something that is the core part of almost every ancient civilization's lore. When they talk about the history of their culture, they talk about these cataclysmic events that reshaped the society and that people emerged from the darkness and restarted the world. How long has civilization been around, and how many times has it been reset?
Fundamentals, I think the 5 pillars, if you will, are sunlight during the day, morning and day, and trying to limit bright light exposure at night. Then I would say movement. You got to move. Cardiovascular and resistance training. Then nutrients, macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And then I think in addition to that, sleep, right? You're probably not going to dissolve into a puddle of your own tears from a couple of bad nights sleep every once in a while. But sleep makes you mentally, physically better. You perform better. And then the last one is social connection. You can't stay isolated constantly or people lose their minds. So when you look at people that get very depressed, one or several of those 5 things is going to be diminished.
I look at these topics that we're into, cataclysms, Younger Dryas, lost ancient technology.
Magnetic poles. I watched a video on that this morning, the Adam and Eve video. How much of that is agreed upon? That there could be a time where the magnetic poles actually shift?
They say that the last one was like 778,000 years ago and we're like 200,000 years overdue. But the Adam and Eve story, the theory of that is that it's a planet flip 90 degree. The Earth essentially does a standstill. The sun will basically stay in the same spot, causing heating like we've never experienced, and that the wind and the waters continue with their momentum because essentially the wind travels at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. When that event happens, it's going to be cataclysmic. In that document, it says 6 days, things start simmering down a bit. By day 7, things are starting over new.
Have you ever been around a Belgian Malinois? They look at you like this. They're always thinking, you can't just keep one of those in your yard. They're too smart. They're working dogs. First of all, they climb fences like a chimpanzee. They just go right up the fence and over it. They can do shit where they leap through the air, like soaring. I'm talking like 12 feet in the air. They run, jump off a guy's back, and then leap, climb over walls that are like 10 feet tall. It's insane. Look at this. I mean, that's insane. How's that dog doing that? Look at him running up the fucking wall. I mean, he's basically a monkey. Look, he's running up a fucking tree to get to a mitt, and then he's hanging on it. It's crazy. Look how smart they are. They walk across a tightrope. Isn't that insane? They're so intelligent, but that's closer to a wolf. They're basically an athlete wolf.
Do you know about the Candiru?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how they have to get it out?
No.
Okay, so it's this tiny parasitic catfish in the Amazon, and what it does is it's attracted to urea, which comes out of fish scales. But because it's attracted to urea, will swim up your urethra. Now that's all fine and well, but it has reversed facing spines, so once it swims in, there's no swimming back out. The same spines it uses to lodge into fish gills. Once it's lodged in, the only way to get it out is to butterfly and lift it out.
Oh, God.
I'm not even going to say it. I can tell you when I'm in the Amazon, I'm like peeing back and forth just because I'm scared something will like swim up the stream.
How often does that happen?
I think it's just incredibly unlucky, but it's happened a lot more than once. It's a relatively regular thing.
Oh, is that? Oh, get out of here. I don't want to see this.
Yeah. It's a fun show.
Yeah, everything's trying to kill you. Harvard opened up a field of study looking into ancient Greece and psychedelic drugs. And it's all about these enlightenment ceremonies that they were doing. They were drinking wine that was laced with ergot, which has psychedelic properties. They were tripping balls. This is where they had the Eleusinian mysteries. Like all these different people from all over the world would come to have these experiences with these people and drink this wine. So many philosophers were a part of that made quotes that we still use today.
Yeah, the foundation of our language, the foundation of Western thought, it's all Greek.
Foundation of democracy. This whole Eleusinian mystery thing, all that was like, these people were most likely at least some time while they were there tripping balls.
What's very clear is that when you're suffering or you're lazy or you're procrastinating, doing something that's harder than the state that you're in bounces you back much faster. This is all based in the dynamics of dopamine. It's sort of crazy. If you know how people are procrastinating to write something and they start cleaning the house, something they normally don't want to do. Well, it's just something that's easier than the thing that you're supposed to do.
Right.
If you do something that's even harder than the thing that you're trying to avoid, all of a sudden you're able to do that. And you're like, oh, okay, well, it's just psychology, right? No, it's not psychology alone. Once dopamine is deployed at that level, you're a different person.
You believe that there was probably more than one significant impact.
Let's be clear. This is the suggestion of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, that we're dealing with a giant comet that broke up into multiple fragments, that orbits in the Taurid meteor stream, and that 4 of those fragments fell out of the Taurid meteor stream, coming in on a trajectory roughly northwest to southeast, crossing the North American ice cap. The impact then continued across the Atlantic Ocean. There's a suggestion of impacts in Belgium, and as far east as Abu Huraira in Syria. It's a global event. 50 million square kilometers of the Earth's surface is within the Younger Dryas boundary field. It's a really huge thing. So the suggestion is that there were multiple impacts at the beginning. Now, I report the work of Klub and Napier, and their suggestion that the Taurid meteor stream is actually fucking dangerous, and that we should be paying attention to it, that it has been a hidden hand in human history in the past, and that it can cause us trouble in the future.
And then there was the Georgia Guidestones. People were like, well, let's blow that shit up. Somebody blew that up.
Something interesting, they still haven't found anyone from that. They don't have anyone. They had a car drive right by it. They have no suspects. I find that really peculiar because there was supposed to be that buried time capsule. They allegedly dug it up and there was nothing there. I find that interesting.
What is this? Is that the car?
Our thing of this whole thing.
Is that
a charger?
What's your crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theory?
Okay, here we go. Some people suspect that what if the powers that be that did create them purposely destroy them, remove that evidence, and pretend those guide stones didn't even exist in the first place, and remove that time capsule. They quickly removed that thing. That's just a little bit weird. Why would you do that? Where's all the people out there taking swabs of everything?
If there was a natural disaster that was imminent and it was headed our way, how much do you think they'd tell us? They'd say a goddamn thing because we would go crazy.
Have you been to Egypt?
No, I haven't been there yet.
Dude.
I heard it's insane.
I climbed to the center of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah?
Wild energy in there. Vibrating like...
Really? Like
weird.
You feel it?
Yeah.
Or is it just like...
No, you feel it.
You're
You can
freaking
almost,
out because you're there?
No, you can almost hear it.
Really?
It's like this weird energy in there, yeah. Like it doesn't put off like a bad vibe or anything. It just feels like electric in there. It's like, what is this, a fucking power station?
What is it? If there's one place that I could go see what the fuck was it like, it would be ancient Egypt. That would be the #1 spot. I'd be like, I gotta see, what were you guys doing? Like, how'd you do this?
When Americans get through trauma, how do they share that burden? They don't. They keep it in their heads. They fall apart because they have nobody to share that burden with. When you hold something in your head that you have no explanation for, your mind creates taxing and burden assumptions that are not helpful. When you talk out loud about it and you get perspective from another human being, you have a way to weigh this, but we also are sharing the burden. I mean, me and Andy Stump talked on a podcast. The story he shared, he had never said out loud, ever. It was always been in his head. After the podcast, we talked about it, and he's like, dude, that helped. I don't know why, but talking about it helped.
It's probably something we're all missing. We really don't have those kind of discussions anymore about the things that bother us. And this thing that people do where they avoid discomfort, it sounds ridiculous, but it just creates more discomfort. You don't realize that in forcing yourself to do something very uncomfortable that you can control, like an ice bath, like a sauna, like a run, like a workout, you are eliminating another form of discomfort. You can do that. I torture myself physically. I'm always working out. I'm always exhausted. I'm always taking ice baths. I was in the sauna before I got here. I'm always doing something. Always. If I have a day where I just lay around, I'm like, this is weird. It's one of the things that I have to do on vacation. When I get up in the morning, whenever I'm on vacation, the first thing I do is work out. I gotta do this, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to enjoy this time off with my family. I gotta get up before everybody else, and I gotta work out hard.
Right there. Press pause if you could. So this is a recreation of a glyph of a painting that once existed. It was destroyed. This is the only example of them even doing anything with stone depicted, but this is not showing them cut a block.
What do you think they're using when those guys are on their knees? It's showing a line. What do you think that is?
I think that they're doing measurements in order to put in hieroglyphs, because we know they did. There's actual evidence of them doing glyphs over prior work. It quite literally could just be showing them carved stuff into it. I saw examples where you have this wonderful stone and then these crude glyphs carved into it. Why would the glyphs look like shit in comparison to a wonderful block? And that's not to say all the glyphs look like shit. Some are spectacular. Let me just clarify. Dynastic Egyptians are the so-called ancient Egyptians we all learned about in school. My argument and others' argument is that there was people before them doing work.
You ever see that rat temple in India?
No.
Oh, dude, this is wild. So this is a temple in India, and these rats all hang out with everyone. They eat with you. They put milk out for them.
Yeah.
The rats are all drinking milk. They all, like, share. It's the weirdest thing. It's like a temple filled with rats. So as these people are all praying, like, dude, rats are everywhere. Everywhere. They've managed to create an environment where they live with rats.
Yeah.
But they're not treated poorly. Look, the rats just like eat their food. And it's this beautiful temple. Does the guy have an explanation?
No.
Let's see what he says.
When they die, they're born as rats. When a rat dies, it's born as us humans.
What if they're right, dude? What if you and me wake up? Rat. You're a rat, dude.
There's a stone called the Russian Thunderstone. Have you heard of this?
No.
So in the 1700s, they took a big lump of granite from Finland and they shipped it to St. Petersburg. It weighed about 1,500 tons. They move it about 150 meters a day. It took them forever. And in order to get that thing across the water, they had to construct a giant barge. And on each side of the barge, they would tie up 3 warships just to keep it stable. It's about the same size, same mass as the obelisk that's sitting in this quarry in Egypt. It's still in the ground. It's like 1,200 tons of granite. And you're expected to believe that they somehow were going to lift this thing up out of a quarry over these, like, basically big hills and mountains of granite.
When you speculate, when you sit around by yourself, because you've thought about this a lot, how the fuck do you think they did this?
I'm convinced it was a form of advanced technology. You open up into the realm of resonance and acoustics and anti-gravity. I think resonance in particular might have played a strong role.
And what people don't realize is that Sahara Africa, up until about 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, was totally green. It was tropical. It had one of the largest networks of rivers ever known to exist. It had the largest freshwater lake ever known to exist, which is Mega Lake Chad, which, just to put this into perspective, it is, if you take all the North American Great Lakes combined, that's 94,000 square miles of surface area, whereas Mega Lake Chad was 139,000.
Whoa.
Massive. So going back to my point, a lot of people see the Sahara Desert and they don't realize that this place was unbelievably different than it is today.
Here's the thing. You're an ancient Egyptian. You're building an equinoctial marker in 2500 BC. Do you know what constellation is housing the sun in 2500 BC?
I haven't run the little program.
Well, it's the constellation of Taurus. So logically, if you're making an equinoctial marker in 2500 BC, you really should create it in the form of a bull, not in the form of a lion. You know, that's the puzzling issue. And yet we do have a time when a lion constellation housed the sun at dawn on the spring equinox, and that is the period of the Younger Dryas.
They use poison to fish. It's really strange. They
poison the fish?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think was that the Yanomami of maybe Bolivia or something like that. It's one of those tribal peoples that lives almost uncontacted, but still they'll have like Under Armour t-shirts on and shit. It's weird. Okay. But they smash this plant up and make like this green pulp, and then they put this pulp in these ponds, and these fish just float. It's some sort of toxin, and it just fucks these fish up. And then they go and scoop the fish and take them out of there.
It's not toxic to us, I guess?
I don't know, man.
I guess you have to be really fucking hungry to think, okay, I'm not killing enough or getting enough fruits or vegetables. I'm gonna poison these things. I'd rather die being poisoned than starving to death.
That's one of the things that Putin said when he talked about he's been through 3 different presidents. Everybody has these big ideas until they get in office. Then once they get in office, they all do the same thing.
Exactly.
He said men in dark suits come and visit them. They're wearing a suit like mine. They come in, they tell them how things are run. And that's the reality of being an American
Callan
president.
don't believe that, though.
I think that's
too conspiratorial.
It's pretty fascinating that the Vatican has accumulated such an immense stash of artwork. It's really mind-blowing.
And meanwhile, they have 53 miles of shelf space within that archive. No one's allowed in there. You have to be a certain academic and you have to get permission. You can't just go browse it. You have to specifically request what you want to look at. And the issue with that is that if you don't know it exists, how do you know to ask for it? So it's like, who knows what type of information could be in there? I'm not suggesting that their shelves are lined with secrets from Egypt or anything, but it does make me wonder, 53 miles of shelf space is an astronomical amount of old ancient text.
Yeah, it really is. Human beings, especially in Africa, had achieved an insanely high level of sophistication. What they had done in Egypt is still, to this day, one of the most confusing things that anyone's ever been able to accomplish. There's distinct evidence of a very advanced culture, and it exists all over the world. There's these stone structures that are so complex, and we don't know who did them, we don't know how they moved them, and all this evidence seems to point to that. At one point in time, human beings had reached a very high level of sophistication for design, for construction, for the ability to move stones and cut them. Like, it's really high levels of construction. You're getting all these stones to meet perfectly at the top of a massive pyramid that's 2,300,000 stones. Mind-boggling. What is the argument about the Sphinx, the enclosure of the Sphinx? And Dr. Robert Schoch, who's a geologist, what was his conclusion?
the Sphinx and the trench out of which the Sphinx is cut bears the unmistakable evidence of precipitation-induced weathering. Weathering caused by exposure to a substantial period of heavy rainfall. And that is particularly pointed out in the vertical fissures in the trench. You see, the Sphinx itself has been subject to so much restoration over so many years that it's difficult for people to even see the core body of the Sphinx today. But it's these, you can see the vertical fissures even down at the back of there. That is what shock counts as heavy rainfall. And the problem is we don't have that rainfall in Egypt 4,500 years ago. You have to go back much earlier to get that rainfall.
They're developing technologies right now, and they have been. I've been sitting on this for 7 years without talking about it. And here's the basic idea. Resonance frequencies. Everything vibrates. If we had an electric razor, plugged it in, turned it on, set it on this table, it's going to move around, isn't it? That's the beginning of the concept because it's vibrating. Everything vibrates at a frequency, and if you know that frequency, you can control things. And I think that's the basic idea of what we're looking at here.
So somehow, through this technology, they're able to move stones or cut stones or all the above?
All the above. And it's all based upon the ancient numbers.
Have you seen the Honduran lost city of the monkey god? There's a legit full civilization in Honduras, like a bustling city that they found using LiDAR 2 or 3 years ago.
Just empty.
Empty. But like a full-scale city. Not like a village or a town, like tens of thousands. Yeah, look at that.
Fucking wild. Yeah. But it totally makes sense, man, if you bring in smallpox. I mean, smallpox kills like 90% of the people that get it.
Right, right.
So it just fucking decimated the populations of these places when the Europeans first came through and they first reported about these immense cities.
They were there.
Yeah, they were there.
Yeah.
And so then when people came back like 100 years later, they're like, what is bullshit?
Right.
Because the jungle would just overcome everything.
And it can in so little time.
So little time.
It's crazy. The rate of growth when the jungle's left alone is unbelievable.
Let's imagine we develop space travel where it's repeatable and we could get to another planet in like 6 months. And we find a planet with a primitive version of human beings. Not even primitive, just not modern era.
Yeah.
Just a few hundred years ago. And then we come back a year later and they're overrun with machines and there's just a small pocket of humans left. They're just overrun with something that they created that just took over and took off. And then we realize like this can happen everywhere. And that's kind of a life form. We just don't think it's a life form because it doesn't have blood and cells, but it's technological life form.
And then that explains the Fermi paradox. Anytime a planet is on the precipice of inventing machine intelligence, an invisible cosmic order that has already figured out that that's cancer wipes them out. Just
Yellowstone is absolutely fascinating. What you're looking at is a caldera. It's an immense volcano that's happening right now. It's a continent killer. I mean, if it does erupt, we are fucked. Everybody on this country is essentially dead. If you want to live, you better get to New Zealand and pronto. It kills everything, and it happens every 600,000 to 800,000 years, and the last time it happened was 600,000 years ago.
If you survive the initial eruption, the ash that's going to cover thousands of miles away, feet deep, it's going to destroy the water. It's going to turn into acid. Even if you survive the initial eruption, you're still fucked.
Yeah, and then you live in nuclear winter because the sky's going to be covered in ash and no sunlight will get through, no food will grow. I was playing Quake. I would play all night long, man. I installed a T1 line in my house. Back when I couldn't get good internet because I was living in the mountains. I was like, what can you do? And they go, well, if you had a business, we could run a T1 line. I go, well, I got a business. Let's run a T1 line. They had to fucking dig up the street and lay pipes. I went hard.
Damn.
So I could play Quake. I know Fingerprints of the Gods you released in
1995.
That's when I first read it.
Yeah.
And I became obsessed. What motivated you to put that out?
I began to come across things, particularly traveling initially in Ethiopia and then in Egypt, which made me wonder about the past. Standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Egypt is an awe-inspiring experience. 6 million tons, 481 foot high, 13-acre footprint. This massive thing, and archaeologists are saying it's just the tomb of a pharaoh, and yet no pharaoh's body was ever found inside it, or indeed inside any ancient Egyptian pyramid. There had to be another explanation. I felt it was important to start giving an alternative point of view. Could there be something missing from the story of our past? That's why I ended up writing Fingerprints of the Gods, to allow people access to information that they had not had access to before, and to begin to think for themselves instead of just accepting the word of the so-called experts. The experts know a great deal, but they shouldn't be given a monopoly over the story of the human past.
I was approached both about crypto and about NFTs. And both times I was like, fuck off. I don't want to have
Good on you, man.
Nothing to do with it.
Good on you.
If someone says, hey, we have this amazing new protein powder, and I can look at the data and I go, okay, I'll take that. That makes sense to me. But if you're saying something that I don't understand, explain it to me again like I'm 5. Tell me what a non-fungible token means. Like, oh, well, you know, only you own it, but I could take a screenshot of it.
Right.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
When all those people were saying plant-based meat is the future, like, the fuck it is. It's really bad for you. Not only that, it's monocrop agriculture, which is terrible for the land. It's terrible for living creatures. If one life equals one life, you're way better off buying cows and eating cows than you are buying corn. Because in order to grow a stalk of corn, a lot of shit has to die. And you're controlling enormous swaths of land with only one crop. That is totally unnatural, doesn't exist anywhere in nature. And in order to do that, you have to poison everything else. If you want to buy plant-based food and plant-based meat, you're supporting monocrop agriculture, industrialized farming, and you're supporting very unhealthy food.
The idea of a small group of people who meet in a ski resort town in Switzerland making the decisions about this for people all around the world.
And they're doing it on private jets. I was pig hunting once. We were walking down this dirt trail, and there was this really high grass to the right of us, and inside were wild pigs, and they were fighting. And dude, it sounded like demon shit. It sounded like Lord of the Rings stuff. I was like, Jesus Christ.
It's like Mordor.
If we were hunting demons, and that's just what they looked like,
turn around.
It'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
Like hearing that noise coming out of the grass, I was like, what the fuck? They will charge you too.
Yeah.
That's what's scary about wild pigs. They'll fucking go after you. What is that one island? There's some island where these pirates went there and they built this elaborate trap.
The Curse of Oak Island.
The Curse of Oak Island. They got a TV show on this.
Yeah, that's what it's.
Yeah. So they figured out a way to put this stuff down in a way that you could get to it, but it would be very, very difficult. But I think then climate change happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, the shoreline probably changed a little bit. But this is, they're trying to dig it.
Season 7 of it, so they obviously haven't found it yet.
And they still can't find it.
So they have these giant excavator crews. How do you get 7 seasons out of finding nothing? Like Finding Bigfoot. Those motherfuckers are still looking.
They're still looking.
How many seasons?